That journey. In about 20 minutes' time, we'll have news from your area, and you can, of course, tune into your BBC local radio station for the very latest weather and travel news as well.
In other news this morning, the boss of Barclays, Bob Diamond, is under increasing pressure to resign.
David Cameron has said those responsible must be held accountable, while Labour have called for criminal prosecutions. Shares in the bank tumbled after the interest rate fixing scandal emerged.
Of course, Barclays have been fined nearly £300 million for lying about lending rates, which affect trillions of pounds of transactions. Thank you very much indeed for that update.
Just to let you know, in the next few minutes here on Breakfast, we will be speaking to Mark Hope, and he's Financial Secretary to the Treasury, specifically about Barclays, about Bob Diamond and the whole issue going on with banking at the moment.
It's 11 minutes past 8. A legal loophole which has allowed hundreds of child abusers to escape prosecution has been closed.
After hours of overnight negotiations at an emergency summit in Brussels, European leaders have agreed new measures aimed at restoring financial stability across the Eurozone.
The plans aim to break the link between weak banks and governments and help countries with dangerously high borrowing costs.
Our political correspondent Robert.
Now, it's had a spin around the Strictly ballroom in the last few days, and now the Olympic torch has taken to the ice. Indeed, they should be called. That brings you up to date at 13 minutes past 8. Carol will have the weather from Buckingham Palace for us in about 5 minutes' time.
As you've been hearing, it's been a pretty bad week for Britain's banks. Thousands of NatWest and RBS customers were locked out of their accounts for days, and many of you with Ulster Bank accounts are still having problems getting your cash.
And now Barclays bosses are under pressure to resign after fiddling interest rates that could have affected mortgages and pension funds. There are even calls this morning for criminal prosecutions.
So has trust in banks been completely destroyed? We've been finding out what some of you thought.
I think we're going to look at the weather. We've had some amazing pictures in from you this morning of flooding in various parts of northern England. We'll bring you some of those pictures and video in a few minutes' time. But let's see how the weather is going to look today. Carol is in the Buckingham Palace Gardens for us this morning. And I think she's got some breakfast as well, haven't you?
Lucky you.
We've been talking about the weather today with Carol. It looks like it's going to be a bit brighter, but there's still a massive clear-up underway, especially in the northeast of England, after the torrential rain of yesterday afternoon and evening.
Yes, flash floods meant that road closures in rush hour, which left many commuters stranded, while others had to wade home. Some of them passed the time by calling into BBC Radio Newcastle, and here's what they had to say. Some extraordinary stories, extraordinary pictures. We've had lots of pictures as well from you this morning.
The damage that's been caused and how long it's going to take to clean up. James has emailed us in from the Cotswolds. He said...
Emails, and good luck for the rest of the day as well. Premier League footballers earn thousands of pounds a week, so the idea of managing on a tight budget is something which many of them may be unfamiliar with.
But this week, the Everton player Jack Rodwell found out what it's like. He's spent time with 21-year-old Mishak Wright, who's been unemployed for a year.
So what did he learn? Both are here now. Very much. Coming up, the BBC News Channel is going to have the latest news from home and abroad for you.
And here on Breakfast, we're going to be live inside Buckingham Palace as the Queen puts on a very special exhibition for her Diamond Jubilee. And Jenny is there.
Very good morning to you. This is Breakfast with John Kay and Louise Minchin.
Our main story this morning is that roads and rail lines are still blocked in many places, and thousands of people living without power after torrential weather hit large parts of the UK.
Townsend.
In other news, Barclays boss Bob Diamond is under increasing pressure to resign. David Cameron said those responsible must be held accountable, while Labour have called for criminal prosecutions. Shares in
a legal loophole which has allowed hundreds of child abusers to escape prosecution has been closed.
After hours of overnight negotiations at an emergency summit in Brussels, European leaders have agreed new measures which are aimed at restoring financial stability across the Eurozone. The plans...
The WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, who's taken refuge in Ecuador's embassy in London, has been ordered by police to turn himself in. And
it's had a spin around the Strictly ballroom already, and now the Olympic torch has taken to the ice rink as well. It's 8:37. Those are this morning's main stories. There's another story that's dominating as well. A lot of people had a late night, didn't they, Louise?
I might have done.
Watching the tennis.
I couldn't turn it off. It was too exciting.
You might be having another late night tonight.
Oh, no.
More tennis to go. Now, it's been a busy year of Jubilee celebrations for the Queen, and now she's opening up the doors of Buckingham Palace for the summer season. From tomorrow, you'll be able to look around the staterooms and take a peek at Her Majesty's amazing collection of diamonds.
Yes, in all 10,000 rocks can be seen, some pieces of jewellery that have never been on display before. Jenny Hill is at the Palace for us this morning. She's been giving us a sneak preview. Very good morning.
Lovely stuff from Buckingham Palace this morning, and we'll be back there again in a few minutes' time. We're going back inside to see what else we can find.
Now, most of us hope that we live to a ripe old age, and increasingly we are managing it. Older people are the fastest growing age group in Britain, and a quarter of all children born today are expected to live beyond 100. But the way we each experience old age can be vastly different. And
to find out more, some familiar faces have been sampling a life in later years that's a world away from their own for a new series on the BBC called When I'm 65. Gloria Honeyford.
Gloria, so much to talk about, but it's really genuinely shocking that she was trying to eke out £3 a day.
Yeah, you can't believe it, and that's the big eye-opener to me. And I have to say, whereas I thought that maybe in a tiny, tiny way...
With glamorous assignments and lovely opportunities. What was it about a job like this, which was clearly going to be tough and put you in a difficult situation? Why would you want to do it?
Well, you did manage to help her. I don't want to give too much away, didn't you? Because, you know, this episode of the When I'm 65 series is called When I Get Older. It's going to be shown on Wednesday evening at 9 o'clock on BBC One.
We're going to go back to Buckingham Palace for a bit more glamour and a few more diamonds in a few moments. But first, let's a quick final look at what's happening where you are. See you in a second.
Welcome back, all of you. All morning we have been inside Buckingham Palace, where a special exhibition of the Queen's jewellery is being unveiled for the Diamond Jubilee.
And Jenny Hill got the ticket. She's been looking at some of the incredible stories behind...
Yes, Jenny, thank you so much. It's been fantastic to have a little preview. Thank you very much indeed.
Lovely stuff inside. We've been talking all morning about the reality of the flooding. It was yesterday afternoon and evening, but really I think it's only this morning that the full extent of it and the damage has become clear.
Yes, let's have a look at some of the pictures overnight. Not managing to get back home until this morning, actually.
I know. In fact, we've just had one message here from Ellie, who's got to get from Berwick-on-Tweed to Darlington. Would normally take 2 hours. Left home yesterday afternoon and reckons it's going to be the end of the day today before she gets back. 24 hours because of flight problems, train problems. Astonishing. Lots of you have been sending us in pictures this morning.
Yes, let's have a look at this one. This is from Tyne Bridge.
Including one from, one that was almost the size of a banana earlier, and people sending us pictures next to other things like pound coins, so you can tell just how big they are. Let's
get to some other stories as well. Mark on email says, I left Newcastle to return to Birmingham at 4. At 9 o'clock, I was still in Newcastle, so it hadn't moved, basically. At every turn, there was more traffic and roads closed. I ended up staying with a plan to leave this morning. Good luck, Mark, when you do eventually leave.
Richard, also in Newcastle, said the flood was so deep at the end of our road, local children were swimming in it, but cars couldn't get through.
Kathleen's got a sense of humour about all this. We have a swimming pool delivered, and I didn't even order one. We were lucky enough, though, as weren't flooded. Half our street was, but we had no electricity. We were celebrating our son's 21st in candlelight. We will never forget it.
Absolutely. A day to remember. And Laura messages in, just to get things into perspective, bit of UK-wide balance. She got sunburnt yesterday and said it was sunny and warm, and she's talking about the fact that many parts are still in drought.
Yes, it really seemed to be particular areas. Thank you very much for all your emails and comments for us this morning. That's pretty much all the time we've got this morning. You can get the latest on the flooding situation, of course, on the BBC News channel and as well on your local radio and TV stations too.
And as we've been hearing this morning, the Queen is opening the doors of Buckingham Palace tomorrow for the summer. From then, you'll be able to look around the staterooms, take a peek at her diamond collection. So we'll leave you with a scene from there, from the palace.
Have a great